are these people?
Um,
But speaking of, I think this is actually kind of a decent segue.
hmm.
Um, so um, as I said earlier, for those of you who have been around, or if you are just coming in, welcome. Please like, share, subscribe, you know. We're trying to hit 1K,
Yeah,
like
we're
by the end of
close.
the year. We're
If
very
you haven't
close.
subbed yet, please do.
So yeah, so
Uh,
we're very close. So yeah, so please help us so that hopefully by the holiday season we'll be able to be monetized, if not by the new year.
yeah.
So with this network. So yeah, but that aside, so yeah, my rants this week is on Cori Bush.
Hmm.
I think this is the first rant I did on her. And Reef kind of understand, like, I struggled with this last night. Like, um, I wanted to talk about it in light of her book, which I heard murmurs about for a while, that I probably since last year, that she was in the process of writing a book, and it's out now. You can purchase it if you want to. And I had issues with it. And I didn't know how to necessarily process what my issue was. But I think I figured it out this morning.
Okay.
Um, what my problem with the book, and by extension, Cori, is.
Hmm.
So this might be a little messy, but I think it will make sense to you all. Like, it'll be a little more cohesive, I hope. Um, but to start, my boss,
Present, my
um,
boss.
my boss,
Hmm.
tweeted this back over the summer, which I actually bookmarked. But I think he got this from an orientation he was doing. But one of our wonderful thought leaders, Angela Davis, once said, "Radical simply means grasping things at the root." Hold on to that quote, and I'll come back to that later.
Cool.
So, actually, you could pull the next slide. Actually,
You might even be able to.
the thing is on my
Yay! There it is.
oh, there we go. All right, so as I said, Cori Bush was very excited yesterday because her book is out for sale. And she
Hmm.
tweeted, "I can't believe it. Finished copies of my book are here, and I got to hold it in my hands for the first time along with my sisters, Ayanna Presley and Rashida Tlaib. My book, The Forerunner, comes out, well, tomorrow, well, today, is out. A dream 30 years in the making. I hope you pick up a copy too." And as expected, a lot of people in this space, myself included, had some things to say. If you follow Cori, you could see, you could see what I said. Like, I know Uncle Warren said something. RBN, some members there said something about this. And as I said, like, I struggle with this because um I knew, like, and especially from the article that I'm about to reference for this rant, the story is about her life so far. So it basically is an autobiography, of, her life up until she started Congress. And I don't want to bash Cori within the book in terms of what she went through personally, prior to being in Congress. you know, I want to give some grace there for her because, as I told Reef, um, off, before we came live, I think one of the things that attracted people to Cori, um, especially when she was running, this round back in 2020, and why I remember being cautiously optimistic about her. I think out of the squad that we know, like, because I don't think they really put out their private lives like that. Cori represents herself as one who is truly she is the working class. You
Yeah.
know, she has said she never intended to go to Congress. She was asked to go into Congress in light of the activism she was doing, especially, you know, in 2020. And especially with the things that were happening in St. Louis at the time, regarding Black Lives Matter. And, you know, but as I told Reef, Cori in a lot of ways reminds me of my mom and other members of my family in what she has went through, which she has described in interviews, and I think in more recent interviews in as she's selling her book. I don't want to go off on her for that because she's entitled to speak her truth. And, you know, and she's been through a lot, and I sympathize with that. What I am going to do is, and I realized that what I was doing was I was kind of combining both Cori, the woman, and her life experience, and Cori, the politician. So I think once I was able to make that separation, you know, in terms of who Cori is as a person versus who Cori presents herself to be as a politician, then I think like my block was a lot easier to kind of gather my thoughts around. But I want to focus on Cori, the politician.
Okay.
But how I think she has used her life as a shield, in a sense, in terms of her politics, and why in some ways that's problematic and, for me, disappointing. So I'm going to go to the next slide.
Yep.
So she did an interview with Cut, part of New York Magazine. Actually, if you can remove both screens, Reef, so I can read. So the title of it is The Pain and Glory of Cori Bush. In less than 2 years, the Congresswoman built a base of power in DC by wearing her hardships on her sleeve. Just 3 days after Cori Bush arrived in Washington, D.C., as the first Black woman to represent Missouri in Congress, election deniers descended on the Capitol. The January 6th insurrection was convulsive in a way Bush couldn't fully fathom, yet she felt prepared. I wasn't afraid for my life or anything, she says. I come from protests, it ain't no big deal. She was more concerned for her staff than for herself. I was like, I may go down, but I'm going to go down fighting using staplers. Oh, wait.
Staplers?
That's
my stapler?
A second. There we go. Staplers, printers, whatever was needed was going to have to fly through the air. She laughs, but it's serious. It's remembering this welcome to Congress that most Avenue H. Bush, draped in a red raglan sleeve tee with her signature acrylics, intermittently punctuating her words over a video call. In that moment, she says, she remembered her promise to her district. I told the people of St. Louis, if you elect me, I'll be ready on day one. She kept her word, and that same day, she introduced her first piece of legislation directing the House Ethics Committee to investigate Republican Congress members who challenged Donald Trump's election loss and incited what she calls a domestic terror attack. I couldn't look at the fact that, oh, you're a freshman, you've been here for less than 72 hours, she says. It was, hey, we have the people with the know-how to get this done, and that's what we did.
Get what done?
A good question. She appeared on Rachel Maddow that night while the Capitol was on lockdown and spoke on the House floor. She didn't leave until 4:30 the following morning. Bush's name recognition shot up quickly. She's since become a star of The Squad, establishing a progressive platform that includes Medicare for all, a $15 federal minimum wage, reproductive rights, and criminal justice reform. In less than 2 years, she's created a base of power in an institution ruled by those with seniority and deep pockets by simply carrying out the duties she promised her community she would. Though she's been deemed controversial at times, she clashed with former President Obama over his comments that lawmakers could lose voters if they endorsed defunding the police. Bush's staying power became apparent when she breezed through August's Democratic primaries, which all but secured her second term. Marking how far the Congresswoman has come is a new memoir, The Forerunner, A Story of Pain and Perseverance in America, out on October 4th. The book is at once piercing and gripping, threading together wrenching tales from her journey to DC that illustrates Bush's grit and focus. While she's spoken before and often about her activism and pastoral and nursing backgrounds, in Forerunner, she's even more vulnerable, revealing the bad, ugly, mad parts of her life in hopes her colleagues and others in positions of power take note. Because she's a walking embodiment in the halls of Congress of the idea that anyone from anywhere can ascend beyond the limitations forced upon them, not everyone everywhere understands what those limitations are, what it's like to live on food stamps, to be uninsured with a medical condition, to work a $9 an hour job in adulthood, narrowly surviving, to know what single motherhood is like, the loneliness of it all, to not know where you'll live tomorrow, sleeping in your car with 2 babies staring up at you for answers you don't have, what it's like to be sexually violated, not once, but 3 times, by men you trusted, healing from abortions, navigating trauma. In Forerunner, Bush points to Bernie Sanders as a key influence. With his wild justifications and apologetic manner, he's shown me that I didn't have to temper what I believe, even in a static environment, she writes. From Bernie, I learned that I could run as myself. He was the model she wanted to follow, she adds, because he believed that the kind of change I want to see in my community was not only possible, but also necessary, a moral mandate.
Mm.
She also credits her unflinching resolve to growing up in the church. In Bible study and Sunday school, she was reminded of the figure of the forerunner, that person who blazes a clear path where there was none before. A forerunner, she explains, endures life hardships and, with that understanding, strives to improve outcomes for others. Those who have worked with Bush describe her as authentic and principled and a justice seeker, someone who has experienced the pain her constituents deal with directly and brings that with her every day. Fellow Progressive House member Ilhan Omar says, when you have fluency in your constituents' day-to-day struggles, you see problems with more urgency. We can second guess that. As she worked on her memoir, Bush tells me she was intentional about addressing attempts to shame her for the hurdles she overcame. During her run against Clay, for example, his team sent a mailer that questioned Bush's reliability. It noted that she had her nursing license suspended. True, she couldn't afford the renewal payment and writes that his campaign had no idea what it meant to be low income and resource poor, that these matters were the consequences of living in poverty. It also pointed to her free evictions, that these were the results of an assault by an ex, deliberating nurse school costs, and a landlord kicking her out because of her activism. So when the COVID-era federal eviction moratorium was set to expire before Congress went away for summer recess last year, Bush, now in a position of power, chose to channel those past pains into action. She saw the moment for what it was. Members of Congress are just disconnected because they can be, leaving the vulnerable to fend for themselves. She felt uncomfortable going home when many families in the district and across America can lose theirs in hours. I was trying to show myself that I belong, that I can do this work, she recalls. So it was just like push, 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 go, 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 go. Bush stayed behind, organized, and camped out on the steps of the Capitol. Other progressives joined in on the 5-day demonstration, including Omar, AOC, and Ayanna Pressley. Soon, Bush was on every local and national media outlet. Leaders down the road from the Capitol could no longer ignore her. She began having conversations with Biden, Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and representatives from the Treasury and the Progressive and Black caucuses. Bush tells me it was important for her to testify from her personal experience to what those 11.4 million renters were up against. If we don't tell Biden exactly what's happening for someone like him, who wasn't a homeless adult, someone needs to tell him what it's like, she says of her conversations with the White House. Just as a farmer needs to be able to have that conversation with the president to tell him what it's like to be a farmer over this part of the country and what this type of crop is with this type of rain and blah, 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 someone has to tell him what that's like, because otherwise he won't know, and he can't really meet the needs of those folks if he doesn't know. The White House didn't respond to requests for comment for this story. Feeling pressure from the protests, Biden extended the temporary ban on evictions. The episode solidified Bush's stature as a reliable legislator, one who eventually dons the neat attributes that make Black women and girls across America tell her, "You look just like me," to which he tells them in varying ways, "I'm just like you." He was the first ever BLM activist turned member of Congress, being her full self, tattoo across her chest, acrylic nails, box braids, taking on the White House and party leadership, and winning.
Yep.
Through all of this, Bush emphasizes her focus hasn't shifted. Despite being the House's newbie, she's built a strong base of influence out of empathy and the first to stand in the gap for those who got her to DC. Their stories and struggles remind Bush of her duty to be their reflection in the people's house, to stand firm on their behalf. She is committed to bring real life insights to colleagues, those in leadership and in the White House, who can have a tendency to legislate mechanically with the luxury of not knowing or neglecting the bank battles of everyday folks. The same ones Bush can never ignore because she bears the same scars. The people closest to the pain, she says, echoing an adage from her friend and colleague Presley, should be closest to power. So I didn't read the whole thing. I just pulled, I think, the most prominent parts. But in reading all of that, as I said, in reading this, I struggled because, as I said, I don't want to bash Cori for what she's gone through. You know, that wouldn't be right of me to do that. As I said, that's her truth. That's her story. I can't take that away from her. That being said, and I figured out that in this article and in the purpose of writing her book frustrated me. And I will explain why.
Okay.
So actually, if you can remove both screens.
Yep.
So we've talked a lot about activism and organization, mobilization over the last few weeks, I feel like, especially with, Kwame Ture. This is a table that I received from Movement Matters, which is a nonprofit in DC, their affiliation with the teachers advocacy group that I'm a part of. We did this, we had this discussion, as far as organization, what it means. I think it was last summer. And I remember this, so I want to teach you guys something. So if you look on the left column, you could see the types of organization. So direct service, self-help, civic engagement, advocacy, and organizing. So if you look at direct service, self-help, the focus of change, just to give a brief overview, the focus of those change is on the individual. So depending on which one you're looking at, direct service in relation to the existing power structure accepts the status quo, basically. So the role of the constituent is a passive one. So you just get whatever is given to you.
Right.
Self-help is the relationship, rejects existing power struggle, but doesn't try to change it. So the role of the constituent in this scenario is active development and delivering of services. So a little bit better. They're taking an active stance on their own. The following three get to more of the systemic. So civic engagement, the relationship is accepts the existing power structures, it's the status quo. So the role of the constituent is both active participation in predetermined structures. So that's like, I can't think of a good example right now, but I think it would be like, just being involved in what is existing. So it could be like, example, like being a part of DSA, for example. I think that would be like a good, a well-known organization you're just a part of, that's already existing. Advocacy is the relationship is accepts existing power structure but challenges its outcomes. So the role as a constituent is passive, which is attendance at rallies, etc. This is kind of what we talked about as far as mobilization. you can challenge the outcome, but even I wouldn't say necessarily accept, but you don't kind of push into the power structure of what it currently is. So this is kind of what we describe as Kwame describes as mobilization, the idea like you center around issues, rallies. You do that thing or whatever for maybe, as he said, and we showed this quote clip on a couple of videos, like you get really hot for maybe a couple of days and then you sit down. So you just hot and bothered over an issue for a moment and then stop. Organizing is challenges existing power structure. So the role of the constituent is active, which is development and implementation of campaign planning and actions. This is the one that we talk about on the left that we need to do more.
Yeah.
The problem that I was sharing with Reef off camera is I think generally when we get to organizing, we tend to, I think we often head into the advocacy realm a little bit too much. Like we are aware, we challenge the outcome of like things being like, for example, with Chris Smalls, you know, we challenge the idea that Jeff Bezos is shit, but he's not addressing the structure by which Jeff Bezos is allowed to exist and has his wealth. So his result right now, seemingly, is like going to rallies, doing interviews, talking about, you know, like Jeff Bezos is da-da-da, Amazon workers is whatever, you know, whereas what we are looking for is people who are willing to challenge the power structure. So just to clarify all of that, organizing is relationship building is important, essential entry point into organizing. Organizing is a collective effort that relies on numbers to create change. So as Kwame said, you can't be Superman in this work. You have to have people in this work alongside you.
Yeah.
Organization has a longer term focus. It's not just for a day or even a month. Sometimes it can take years. Organizing is about demanding power, not accommodation or access. So again, as Kwame has said, you know, the idea of organization, we don't want to give us power. We're going to take it. We're looking to take power for ourselves and do better than what people who are enlisted in that power can do for us.
Yeah.
And then organizing develops leadership skills. So just a very basic overview of the different types of engagement there are. So you're probably wondering, okay, cool. How does this relate to Cori? Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you how this relates to Cori. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips. A lot of you are probably familiar with these clips. So the first one is where Max Blumenthal, this is at the Capitol. So remember, you know, in the article, it gave a glowing review of what she did at the Capitol last summer. But what they're not going to tell you, and what I'm sure Cori's not going to say, is what happened when Max Blumenthal challenges her in terms of, and asking her a question regarding Medicare for All in relation to the housing moratorium. So if you want to play it, Reef, we can check out what
that's where we are.
And I heard, like, last night there was a lot less people. It's great to see so many more people, but I heard there was an intense debate about the role of the squad and why the squad didn't leverage its vote for the speaker for Medicare for All vote, and why the squad, I mean, with the margin so narrow in Congress, why the squad didn't
because
leverage its vote on the stimulus to get a $15 minimum wage. What?
No. So first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very true, and I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the rally for tonight. And I really would love to keep the conversation on what's happening.
I feel like it's all related to healthcare and
It absolutely is, but this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pramila Jayapal's bill in the House. It is not our bill. We cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor. We have
But Pelosi could have brought the bill to the floor.
We're good here, thank you.
What? Well,
I'm sorry, man. We're fine at this.
Why can't she answer the question?
We're here to talk about the eviction.
But I feel like it's
moratorium.
all about healthcare.
Thank you.
No, really appreciate that.
Really appreciate your time.
We're here for a reason. It's about the moratorium.
Well,
Thank you.
why is that? I can't ask about Medicare for all.
The congresswoman has slept 1 hour. She's done a lot of labor.
I'm trying to get people out here too.
I respect your work.
I'm trying to do the same thing you all are
Wonderful.
doing.
Thank you for being here.
But why
Appreciate
can't
you.
she could just answer it and then I go away? I'm not trying to like attack her or anything. I'm not trying
we're
to
happy give
smear
you a
her.
contact. We're happy to give you a contact and you can reach
But
out.
why is that issue, the Medicare for all vote, so like she was wrapping
I'm
up
not
her?
having this
But she
conversation
was
with you.
wrapping
I'm
up her.
happy to give you-
I know she was
I'm happy-
wrapping up
I'm
her
happy to-
answer. Then
I'm
I was
happy
going to
to-
say thank you. Everybody come.
Need to see anymore, but you get the idea. So what Max was trying to do there, like he was trying to challenge Cori in regards to not just the housing moratorium as well, but a bigger issue and how it relates to, healthcare. Because obviously if people are going to be on the street, they're going to need healthcare, and one, she dodged it. But also if you notice, she was like, she gave every excuse as far as, like, I don't have the power to bring that to the floor, like it would be illegal, whatever bullshit she was saying. Well, Cori, you ran on Medicare for all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this should have been a part of the push, and again, going back to the quote that we saw at the beginning of the segment, radicalism, or essentially being a revolutionary, is getting to the problem, to the root problem, So she was just focused on the housing moratorium, and there's a reason for that I'll explain later. But she was just focused on that issue, but not the why. And so it's very interesting. And again, I know she wasn't going to say it in this interview, like for a book, but this is the other side of Cori. She kind of dodged the bigger picture in terms of, what the moratorium might mean, if people are not essentially getting, care. So that's the first part. The second part, I know probably a lot of you are familiar with this, and probably one of the big reasons why essentially I am here and I am in a lot of ways. So we all know this clip. This kind of went viral last summer. Franco and I, shout out to Franco, we were at the steps. Both of us challenged AOC and the squad, when they won, seemingly, the housing moratorium being extended. And you guys know it, but we're gonna play it.
What are you doing 5:30 p.m. on Saturday? How many days are you gonna be here? Yeah, but that. But what about? And we said none of that matters. We're gonna figure that out. But we're
what are you going to do?
So what
You asked us what we're going to do. What are you guys going to do?
Here's what we're going to do. The CDC just announced an eviction moratorium, and what we're here is for our reasons known and unknown. So our reasons known was to make sure that we extended this moratorium. That's what we're here to.
What about the 10%? What about the 10%?
Okay, we're gonna turn on some music now.
What about the 10%? We can't celebrate.
Yo, damn right we can't celebrate, Collin. Damn right.
I mean, a lot of you are like, Collin, you did it. Actually, I got some heat from this a little bit, but I think the majority of people were like, good job, for calling out AOC, Franco as well. It's hard for me to watch. And I think, going back to what I was saying, this is kind of why I felt frustrated, because I have a personal relationship with Cori, in this. And then I didn't post it here, but she came to the marches for Medicare for All, surprisingly, I did take a picture of her, but it was the idea of like, you came at the tail end when we tweeted at you, we contacted you and every member of the squad to be involved with the organizing that we were doing on the ground, and you were dead silent, you know, and the idea that Cori and AOC kind of dismissed our questions, which again relates the idea of like, you know, you extending the moratorium, but what if people can't pay? They're still going to be out on the street. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do that's better? You know, like, what is your plan of attack for more? And I remember Sabi saying that Afeni, who also lives in DC, did have the opportunity to talk with AOC privately. And I'm not sure if it was Afeni directly, but I know just from out of all of this, the reason why they pushed for the moratorium to be extended, because if they push for more in terms of like loan forgiveness, like rent forgiveness and all of that, they knew that the establishment was going to say no. You know, that was already made clear by Nancy Pelosi, but that was a no-go. So they went with the easy thing of calling for an extension of the moratorium in the guise of, oh, it looks like we're doing something. And then obviously, and then Cori getting the credit for it, to which I'm sure it kind of relates to this book, because now she got the notoriety, she got a little bit of, you know, her name was a little more established. And then, you know, that kind of, I'm sure that was kind of the jump off, you know, for this book. So I think for me, I'm frustrated with Cori because essentially this is a payday for her, you know, in having this book. And again, I don't want to knock her for what she's talking about per se, but in terms of her activism, as she says, you know, you can't be an activist and a politician at the same time. You cannot. Like, your job as a politician is to legislate. But what you should be doing is gathering the information and that unrest from activists on the ground who are challenging the establishment in terms of getting to the root cause of the problems that we have and using that energy to create legislation to make that push, you know, in terms of changing the system. You know, that's what essentially what, as within the Justice Democrats, that's what they were supposed to do. And they failed to do that. So I just see Cori having this book, it's kind of like, you know, an easy way out for herself to kind of say, to kind of give the guise of, oh, because I'm relatable, I'm part of the working class, you know, like I understand who you are. And so I'm going to write a book about it to kind of talk about all these false victories that I've had, you know, in order to make some more money. So in the event, like, you know, to kind of establish herself and to make her gain her generational wealth, but not considering us in the process. Like, I find kind of ironic that she's celebrating this book when we still don't have $15 million minimum wage. We still do not have universal health care. And I think it's kind of funny that people are not going to be able to buy this book because people can't eat. You know?
Well, it brings you to, you know, words of Jesse Jett, which Cynic so gladly shares for us. So fuck all these progressives who can speak on revolution. Once they empty all your powder out and spit on all your fuses, I prefer to judge a leader not by quality of tweets, but the six-figure book deal she chooses. So that's from Love Your Prison. You'd be able to find that on Jesse's Bandcamp.
We linked to it in the description if you want to take a look at any one of Jesse's albums and spoken word pieces. You know, you can check him out there. So shout out to our brother Jesse, and you know, and I think this is this was honestly extremely hard for me. And Reef saw me struggling with this last night as I was prepping this, because I didn't want to necessarily talk about it. But once I made the decision, and then I kind of was like, like trying to work through it. Like, I think once I got to the idea of I could separate the person for who they are and separate the politician from what they are, then it became a little bit easier. And then like things started to click for me. But in closing, I think what frustrates me about Cori is that because of her position, her background, she should know better as far as more so what the working class is going. She's been through it. And she should know as an activist what it means to push the system. An activist is meant to challenge the system. An activist is not meant just to talk about issues. An activist is meant to talk about the problems that are in the society and how we can work towards ideas and organize around the ideas of how we can seize power for ourselves in an effort to make it better. Cori knows that. And instead, because she's concerned, and this is speculation, but I think it would be very much spot on, she's concerned about her position in Congress because she hasn't had any real wins legislatively. And I would argue if she's had any wins legislatively, she doesn't need a book. Her work would speak for itself. But because she hasn't really done anything, then having a book can give the veneer of, oh, I did something. I did the March at the Capitol and I talk about these issues that are popular, by my book, again, to kind of gain generational wealth for herself so that in the event, if she's ever out of Congress, she's good. She will still have this book and probably she will have a lot more and being able to do speaking tours and all that at our expense, basically, because she hasn't, the article, she understands what it's like living on $9 an hour, but our federal minimum wage is $7. She's talked about like how she's had abortions, but she didn't push the president as far as why didn't you ratify?
Yeah.
She talked about how, she was in student loan debt. She didn't talk about how, schools, colleges, and universities are designed to rip us off and how the student loan industrial complex is ripping us off. These are the issues that she should be speaking to, but she's doing the bare minimum right now because she's afraid of losing her position. And so that's the frustration that I have with Cori as far as a politician. As a woman and as someone who I've met and talked to briefly, I respect the fact, and she said she didn't want to go to Congress. She was asked to be. And so I feel like for me, more of that frustration is this was your destiny, essentially, because you were asked to be in the position. It's kind of like, Reef, you asked me to do this, and I told you initially, no, I didn't want to be on INN News. I didn't have the time to be on INN News, but you saw something in me in terms of like wanting to talk about issues that I wouldn't be able to talk about on Mukwano that would limit me to talk about other things that I am passionate about. And you wanted me to have this platform. And I am very appreciative of you for seeing that and pushing me to do this. And so because of that, for me, like, I take this seriously and I want to make sure that we're giving you guys the right information. We're giving you guys, the idea of like, we want to speak truth, but we also want to highlight the stories that people are not necessarily talking about in the space. And I'm very proud of the work, I think, especially in INN, that we've been able to do over the past year. And so knowing that responsibility. I don't take this lightly. And so with Cori, and we had a love letter, Chris, I'm gonna write to you, Cori. It's your turn. Do better. You know better. You've been through it. And as you're going into your second term, I challenge you to be better. Because really right now you have a choice to make. It's either your position or serving us. Thinking about your book for at least a year kind of tells me where your mind was at. You weren't focused on us. You were focused on your career. You were focused on your riches. But what about ours? And so I hope, she's probably not going to see this, but I hope, you know, as she goes into her second term, that she's able to do right by the people that she claimed that she went into Congress for, and push for this towards the system. Don't push about all these issues that everyone else is talking about. You're not better than any politician. You know, speak to the power that you want to give, that you say you want to give to us. Speak to that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, if you want unity, you need to earn it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. There have been plenty of activists who've been pushing you, and as you saw, dismissed.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do that. You can't do that to people who
there's so much. There's so much to do. Well, it's just there's so much to do. There's like there's so much stuff you have to keep up with to even be able to do, like, see the landscape for where it needs to be.